that.
There's always been a complaint in an era when CDs were a thing or vinyl was the dominant form of getting your music, where the labels had such power over which music got distributed. Do they still have that power?
Oh, sure. Absolutely they do. But the opportunity there is there now with technology as it is today for artists to sidestep that. It used to be that if you wanted to promote yourself and build that audience I was talking about, then you needed the dollars that the big majors had behind you to do that.
But has it really been really changed? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out if you can get enough of a following, whether it's on Instagram or whether it's on Facebook, whether you see an increasing number of cases where people are able to sort of make their own fortune away from the labels in a way that's unique.
Yes, absolutely. And we have case studies that show this. For the last 2 years, we've been working with a number of bands across all genres that have managed to build up literally hundreds of thousands of fans, and that's enabled them to put on shows where they've hired the venue themselves, they've sold the tickets themselves, and they keep the majority of that money this way. When they were doing it through the traditional routes of having label services and promoters and managers, then obviously those middlemen all take their share and less ends up in the musician's pocket.
So what's the economic model for your company, for BeatChain? How do you guys generate revenue?
Okay, we generate revenue by having a 3-tier model. So the lowest tier of the BeatChain platform is actually free to use, and it gives a lot of very valuable information. But if you want to get into the real meat of promoting yourself and using the marketing tools that we've supplied, then we have a subscription model, which is for the sort of premium level is $14.99 and then per month, and at the sort of superstar end is only $19.99 per month. So it's still sort of the cost of a pizza a month.
Right.
We need to keep it affordable for musicians.
So what's the draw? I mean, do you have a sense that there would be interest from a major record label to acquire you or partner with you?
Okay. I think there are lots of people looking at what we're doing in the industry. I mean, we have already 50,000 people signed up to BeatChain, and we've only just launched it. So there's a lot of interest in what we're doing, and we're getting a lot of user feedback. And obviously, it's not perfect yet, and we're carrying on improving it all the time. But I think there is a whole bunch of services, especially when you look at the data science, when you look at the data that we generate, and this is something that the artists individually aren't necessarily interested in, but the industry is. You can see signatures in that data. You can look at those artists that are breaking out in different areas, and that is very valuable, even to the major.
Wait, can you imagine a time when, you know how Netflix kind of listens or monitors what people like and then takes pieces of that and kind of recreates a show based around that? Are you saying that that's kind of...
That's basically what we're doing in the background. I mean, there's a lot of interesting technology getting towards machine learning and even some AI, although that tends to be bandied around fairly freely these days. When you bring those different data sets together, you can infer a lot of information and you can make actionable insight out of that. So yes, definitely we are seeing that we can help artists by saying, look, this is what's working for other acts like you in your genre. Try doing this, post here, have this type of content, and when they do that, they see a big uplift in the responses that they get.
Ben Mendoza, thanks for joining us. Really fascinating story. You talk about industry, like you mentioned earlier, Lisa, it's been disrupted. Boy, the music industry has been disrupted with technology.
Well, and it's so interesting to think about how you can get such real-time feedback about what's popular and what's not, and how you can sort of tailor the music to that. And that's sort of what we're seeing out of Netflix, the way that they try to craft shows around the likes or dislikes of the viewers.
Yeah, I could see how this would be for the independent artist who's not signed up to a big label. This would be a hugely value-added story. Ben Mendoza, co-founder and chief executive officer of BeatChain, based in London, but we're fortunate that he's joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio here in New York. So very interesting on the music business. We've seen, more and more the artists, given kind of how the music industry has evolved, has made most of their money today by touring, and it's less so from the recorded contracts that they have with their labels. So interesting to see how Beat Chain fits in here. This is Bloomberg.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only £19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in-store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Good morning. This is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Where's your views on the municipal bond landscape?
The market does not like uncertainty, does not react well to uncertainty.
There's a whole lot of optimism around the valuation of Uber.
What is Ford saying about the self-driving car?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Maybe we're getting hooked on debt and low interest rates.
The black hole called power could be a bigger black hole.
Only buy IPO stock that you can't get. If you can get it, it's probably a dog you don't want it.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at what to expect from the debates tonight in Las Vegas. We're going to hear from the Democratic contenders. Plus, we're going to take a look at what to expect from the financial sector as we head toward a period of a protracted narrow yield curve. Right now, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
It's about tech again. Tech's leading the stocks higher, Lisa, as investors set aside some of their concerns about the virus outbreak that originated in China. Sophie Nguyen, Societe Generale, tells Bloomberg it seems to be time, though, to shift your investment gears.
Our recommendation from a multi-asset standpoint is at this point to stay away from U.S. growth, which is tech, but to go into more value, which is basically EM equities and Japanese equities. So we have this strategy where it's really this barbell portfolio, but we think that being long value at this point makes sense.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.5%, up 17. Dow's up 0.3%, up 97. And the Nasdaq's up 0.8%, up 80. The 10-year is little change with a yield of 1.56%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 1.9% at $53.03 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.4% at $16.0960 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 110.93. The euro is $1.0790, and the British pound $1.2952. Let's take a look at Millennium Management, which has hired the former head of crude oil trading from Citadel after many Wall Street firms and trading houses recorded strong results in commodities trading last year. A source says the New York-based hedge fund founded by Izzy Englander has hired Michael Forsyth as a portfolio manager. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Paul and Lisa.
Great, Jared. Thank you so much. Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. Well, as a Democratic race heats up for the White House, one theme that is emerging is taxation and taxation of the rich. To get a sense of kind of where the different candidates stand, we welcome Laura Davison. She's a congressional tax reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us in the Bloomberg 99.1 studio in Washington, D.C. Laura, thanks so much for joining us. Give us, if you would, kind of a summary of where some of the candidates are in terms of taxation going forward.
Yeah, so there's really quite a range. They're all promoting sort of the same ideas: higher taxes on the wealthy, higher taxes on corporations. But really the difference is the magnitude of how much they want to raise those levies. So kind of at the bottom level, you have Amy Klobuchar, Mike Bloomberg, Joe Biden. They're proposing, some modest increases to the corporate tax rate, and as well as some levies that would hit higher earners, but they haven't gone as far as like a wealth tax, for example. On the other end, you have Sanders, shortly followed by Warren, and then Buttigieg, kind of lagging there in third place of sort of the biggest tax increases you'd see. What they're proposing is really sort of is massive compared to other presidential tax plans we've seen in years past. They're looking at tens of trillions of dollars, just for comparison. And Hillary Clinton in 2016 proposed about a $1.5 trillion tax plan. So there's big differences in sort of what the more moderate lane is doing and what the progressive lane is proposing.
Laura, let's drill into two particular proposals, because there are two individuals on that stage tonight that are going to be really front and center. And that is Bernie Sanders, because he is emerging as the bona fide front runner of this race, and Michael Bloomberg, majority owner and founder of Bloomberg LP, which owns this radio station and the news segment. This is going to be the first debate that he is going to participate in, and so a lot of eyes on him, and he's representing the more moderate branch of the Democratic Party. Can you give us a sense on sort of the scale and what their proposals actually are?
Yeah, so just looking at corporate taxes, for example, there's some new numbers out on that. So that's a kind of a small piece to look at. Bernie Sanders, for example, is looking at proposing higher corporate taxes of about almost $4 trillion over a decade. So he's looking at raising the corporate rate back to 35%, which is where it was before the Trump tax law, and as well as getting rid of some depreciation benefits that kind of help corporations lower their tax rate. So that would be a huge increase in the other direction. Mike Bloomberg is also talking about raising corporate tax rates, but going to about 28%, which is lower than it had been, but kind of a number that Obama had championed for many years. That would be only about a $1.3 trillion increase over a decade. And that 28 number you see come up a lot. That's also Joe Biden's been talking about that. Amy Klobuchar has the lowest number in the field at 25%, which is actually a number that Republicans had talked about when they were planning their tax reform a couple years ago.
So, Laura, one of the big issues that really came to the forefront in 2016 was income inequality. How do these tax plans impact that, if at all?
So it really depends on kind of the specific provision and kind of how you look at them all in total as well. But this is an issue that you hear, that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have talked about specifically. But across the board, all plans would tax the rich a lot more. Income inequality and wealth inequality are sort of two different issues. Income inequality is a lot easier to tackle. You can do that by raising the capital gains rate, which nearly every candidate has proposed to do. Tax that the same as labor income, raising income rates on high earners. Doing things like a financial transaction tax, which Mike Bloomberg said yesterday he would support. That's been something that Sanders and Warren and Buttigieg and other candidates have been talking about for a while. Wealth inequality is a little bit trickier because that's on accumulated wealth, and our tax system, as it stands right now, doesn't tax wealth. It just taxes income, essentially. So the wealth tax that Warren and Sanders have been talking about would do more to alleviate wealth inequality, but there's a lot of questions about, one, is that politically viable, and two, is it even constitutional?
Is anyone talking about rolling back some of the salt tax deductions?
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering, because there's been a theory this has disproportionately hit coastal states that have traditionally voted for Democratic candidates. However, the salt tax deduction, the state and local tax deduction, really does tend to favor wealthier individuals, so it's not politically necessarily going to support the Democratic case. Has there been any weigh in there by the Democratic candidates?
You have really just touched on sort of the hot button issue among kind of Democratic tax thinkers right now. And so really the movement on SALT has been on Capitol Hill. Democrats on the campaign trail have not been talking of that, partly because it is such a state-specific issue. Some of those states haven't even come up yet in the primaries, as well as it's a politically difficult thing, because if you live in Florida or Iowa or Kansas or any of these states that have either no income taxes or very low rates, this isn't important to you, but if you're in Connecticut or New York or California, this is. So what Democrats on the Hill say is they believe that if a Democrat were to come into the White House, if they were to take back the Senate and have control, SALT would be on the table, but that Democrats on the campaign trail are just really too scared to talk about it right now.
So, Laura, what's the argument today, the contemporary argument for not raising taxes?
The contemporary argument for not raising taxes?
Yeah.
Well, so that's sort of kind of the traditional trickle-down kind of idea that Republicans, have championed for a long, long time. Though I've been talking to some Republicans, and they've been saying, and you see this with Trump talking about a middle-income tax cut, is that they're really concerned to talk about lowering rates for top earners and for corporations. The Republicans used to talk for a long time about lowering that top rate, which now sits at 37% for individuals, down to something in the 20s. That's really off the table. They're not going there. You see kind of both the window of what both parties are kind of talking about has shifted to the left, of course for the Democrats, but also some for the Republicans.
Laura, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your thoughts there. Laura Davison, congressional tax reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us from the Bloomberg 99.1 studio in Washington, D.C. And, of course, taxation is going to be one of the key themes I suspect that we're going to hear a lot about tonight at the debates.
Well, there also is the bifurcation in the Democratic Party. You've got Bernie Sanders emerging very much as a frontrunner, consolidating some of the support that previously had been split with Elizabeth Warren. And it's really going to be him very much in the forefront, and Michael Bloomberg coming into the first debate again, founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP. It's just going to be really interesting to see where the focus is. Is it on what plans there are to further the U.S. economy and sort of, with healthcare, et cetera, or is it going to be on beating President Trump? And those are sort of some of the two narratives that have been dominant throughout the entire race.
Yeah, I thought Laura's comments on income tax inequality versus wealth tax inequality very interesting as well, drawing that distinction. Right now, let's head down back to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you have?
Paul, thank you. The coronavirus death toll is now past 2,000, more than 75,000 infections, and the vast majority of those are in China. But another 600 or more have been confirmed aboard a Diamond Princess cruise ship that's been under quarantine at a Japanese port for the last 2 weeks. The first 500 passengers of the Diamond Princess have been allowed to disembark. This passenger, who is also a doctor, isn't so sure that's a good idea.
I think Japan has released many infected people into the Japanese population, and they're going to have an epidemic here in the next month.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control has imposed travel restrictions on those passengers. It says Japan may not have done enough to stem the spread of the coronavirus aboard that ship. The 9th Democratic presidential debate is tonight in Nevada. It will be the first for Michael Bloomberg under rules that no longer require a donation threshold. The former New York City mayor's competitors are already honing their attacks, including Bernie Sanders.
Anybody here worth $60 billion, you can run for president.
2 national polls released the morning before the debate show Sanders leading the field by double digits, followed by combinations of Joe Biden, Michael Bloomberg, Elizabeth Warren, and Pete Buttigieg. We should mention that Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent company of Bloomberg Radio. The longtime advice columnist who accused President Trump of raping her before he took office says she's been fired. She blames the president for repeated insults. E. Jean Carroll announced her departure from Elle magazine on Twitter last night. The New York Times reports her lawyer filed court papers yesterday in a defamation lawsuit that included an email confirming that termination. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
If you promise to cover the latest financial and business news from Asia,
we're talking about social enterprises in Asian countries
with expert analysts who really understand Asia,
aren't you encouraged with respect to U.S.-China trade?
Then you must be us.
Tell us about the trend within this part of the world.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
What sort of fiscal stimulus do you think we'll see?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
For gentlemen who value the quality of an exquisitely made shoe, Jones Bootmaker Master Shoemakers introduce the world-exclusive collection by Loke. Experience the comfort of the cushioned leather footbed and the sustainable, repairable Goodyear welted sole. The world-exclusive comfort collection by Jones Bootmaker and Loke, handmade in Britain. Available at Bow Lane, Broad Street, Fenchurch Street, German Street, Canary Wharf and stores nationwide. Or order online at jonesbootmaker.com.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella. Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube.
And decided to pop down to Greenwich via
A large
indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling...
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish. Tap into the wonderful world of Off-Peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. £1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
You're listening to the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry she wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time she runs out of milk. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are up and chip makers are leading the way for the S&P after Bloomberg News reported China's latest moves to aid growth include possible bailouts for hard-hit industries. More on that in a moment. The dollar climbed to a 4-month high after data on housing starts and building permits exceeded analyst estimates. Treasuries are holding steady. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes of the trading day. S&P is up 0.6%, up 20. Dow's up 0.5%, up 144, and the Nasdaq's up 0.9%, up 88. The 10-year is a little changed. The yield is 1.56%. West Texas Intermediate is up 1.9% at 53.05 a barrel, and COMEX Gold's up 0.3% at 16.09 per ounce. The dollar yen is at 111.02. The euro's at $1.0794, and the British pound at $1.2948. China plans to take over indebted conglomerate HNA Group and sell off its core airline assets, the latest example of how the government's stepping in to contain the economic fallout from the coronavirus. Sources say the government of Hainan, the southern island province where HNA is based, is in talks to take control of HNA. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Boys, we think back to 2019 and even year to date here, equity markets very, very strong here. One area that performed better, but still, I think, a little bit unloved is the financial sector. Dave Ellison, portfolio manager for Hennessy Funds, joins us. He's based in Boston, but joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So Dave, give us a sense of kind of just that financial stocks. I think back to some of the big players, the Goldman Sachs, the Citis at JP Morgan's, had a pretty good 2019 in terms of performance. How do you think, how's the group in general been performing financials?
Well, I think you're seeing a separation. The people that are balance sheet centric, meaning that they have the bulk of their earnings from the balance sheet, they're not doing well. They're underperforming, and I have a small cap financial fund that's actually down for the year, and that's primarily a balance sheet centric business. But the ones that have more fee income, more recurring fee income, like a Visa or a MasterCard, they continue to do well because that's what people want. They don't want to own these balance sheets that are under threat from either credit or low rates.
A lot of people look at the banks as sort of completely dependent on the yield curve. The flatter the yield curve in the United States goes, the gap between, in particular, 2-year and 10-year Treasury yields, the less value people see in financials. Today we're seeing the yield curve flatten yet again. Do you think that this is a fair assessment of the relationship between the yield curve and financials?
I think so. I mean, disappointingly so. When I started many, many years ago, Fed funds were at 18%, so it didn't matter what the yield curve was. You made plenty of money. But now the flatness of the yield curve and the lowness of rates relative to zero is a double whammy. And if you look at a big bank like JP Morgan, half of their profit's going to come from the balance sheet. If you look at a medium-sized to smaller bank, it can be 75 to 90% of their income comes from the balance sheet. So if rates are going to go low and we're going to end up like Japan here in America, those spreads are going to come in, and that's going to attack half to 80 to 90% of their revenue. So if I told you that half of Apple's revenues were under pressure, where do you think the stock would be going?
Right. All right, let's take a look at the asset management side of the business. We had another deal announced yesterday, Franklin Templeton buying Legg Mason, $50 a share. Is that just a reaction to the issue that has plagued the asset management business for almost a generation now, which is this pressure on fees?
I think it's that, and it's also these acquisitions allow them to reset employee levels, compensation levels, layers of management levels. So you have a number of things that go on there. But again, this is addition by subtraction. You're putting two companies together that are losing AUM, hoping that you can, by subtraction, meaning even though you're still shrinking, you can add value for the shareholders by, and again, resetting the corporate structure. That's what acquisitions allow you to do, and I think you're going to see that more in this business.
The backdrop of this merger was that active management, in particular active equity fund management, is a dying industry. That is your industry. What do you think when people say that?
Well, I think there's, it's an industry that is under pressure because of what the market is doing. And the market is giving you fairly decent performance metrics, which makes the index funds a safer way to play. So what the Fed is essentially done is taken a lot of the volatility out of capitalism. They did it 2 Decembers ago. They did it 3 or 4 months ago when the repo thing. They don't allow capitalism to come back in and therefore allow active management to add value. And so as long as the Fed is there, tamping down volatility and tamping down capitalism, then being in an index fund where you're just going along with the flow of money and the growth of money in the system. Because remember, this money is coming into the system every day. There's more dollars out there every day. If the same amount goes into stocks will slowly go up. And if the Fed says we're not going to have any volatility, then you should just own an index fund. But once volatility returns, if it ever does, the active management will win. And the question is that the market doesn't, or at least investors don't believe that that's going to happen right now.
What areas are you looking at right now that are most, attractive to you right now? Again, we're 11 years into this economic cycle. The markets have been rallying. And so where do you see opportunity?
Well, I think, the market is telling you that you should own 5 stocks.
Right.
And that's...
And financials aren't one of them. Right?
Well, right, they aren't. But certainly the Visa, MasterCards of the world have done quite well, and that's why my large cap fund has performed well. Thank God I'm doing something right. And I think the winners are going to continue to be winners, and the companies that don't want to invest in their future, don't want to take chances, are going to continue to fall by the wayside. And I think you just have a lot of have and have-nots out there. You have it in income and distribution. You have it in stock valuations. You have it in home prices. And it's just going to continue.
Dave Ellison, thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
Dave Ellison is a portfolio manager of the Hennessy Small Cap and Large Cap financial funds, joining us here in our Interactive Brokers studios, normally based in Boston. A really interesting kind of conundrum, and I've heard this before, Paul, from people saying the Fed has killed off the volatility as well as sort of the natural price discovery that markets have been used to. And the question is, what will occur if they allow it to go back? Or does this mean that they kind of can't?
They can't. And if you look around the world, it's not just the Fed, the ECB, and some other central bankers as well. So that seems to be the world we're in right now, post-financial crisis.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at the housing market, in particular, repurposing shipping containers for housing. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are higher. China's considering measures to boost its crippled airline industry. Bloomberg News has learned it could use cash infusions and mergers to bail out the carriers, though no final decision has been made. Shares of Groupon are plunging. That's after earnings missed estimates and the company announced plans to stop selling goods. Groupon Goods, that's its e-commerce site for products like phone chargers and coats, was an attempt to attract new customers. But the company said consumers have lost interest, and that's why it's phasing out the program this year. Dish Network exceeded analyst estimates for sales and profit, boosting confidence that the company can offset satellite TV subscriber losses with gains in Sling TV streaming customers. And Bed Bath & Beyond is selling its personalizationmall.com business on efforts to slim down. The company agreed to sell the online personalized gift company for $252 million to 1-800-Flowers.com. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
The government and the NHS are prepared to deal with coronavirus. You can help too. The best way to protect yourself and others is to wash your hands with soap and water or use a sanitizer gel regularly throughout the day. Catch your cough or sneeze in a tissue, bin it, and wash your hands. If you have recently arrived back from specified areas, follow the returning traveller advice. Check the list of areas and find out more at nhs.uk/coronavirus.
Do you do the same thing every weekend? You know, meet up with the same friends for brunch, browse around the same shops, eat the same Saturday night takeaway. Mine's a lamb balti with mushroom pilau rice. Snuggle up next to the same person and watch the same brain-numbing reality TV. Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing, gotta check me a vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back, while Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
And then
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to chat with the CEO of SG Blocks and discuss how their repurposed shipping containers can help mitigate the affordable housing crisis. Plus, we're also going to chat with tech venture capitalist Roger McNamee, founder of Elevation Partners, about Facebook and its political ad policy. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Moving even higher right now, Paul. Tech companies are leading that surge as investors set aside some of their concerns about the virus outbreak that originated in China. Oil accelerates to the upside because of the same thing. Colin Pickering, Berenberg senior economist, tells Bloomberg consumers don't really need to worry so much about volatile oil prices these days.
You get a high oil price because of supply side issues in the Middle East. The US produces more oil. If you get weaker demand because of China and the like, suddenly you get a cutback in oil production. So the oil price is much more stable. The inflationary consequences are much more muted. So overall, from an economics point of view, yes, we get some interesting geopolitics. We get some distributional issues. But from a macro point of view, it's not something you have to worry about as much as you did 15 years ago.
Right now, West Texas Intermediate's up by 2.4%. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.6%, up 20. Dow's up 0.5%, up 136. And the Nasdaq's up just about 1%, up 91. The 10-year is down 1/32 with a yield of 1.56%. West Texas Intermediate's at 53.27 a barrel. COMEX Gold's up 0.25% at 1607.30 an ounce. And the dollar yen is at 111.13. The euro at $7.92, and the British pound at $29.41. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
The more that rates go down in the United States, the more we see the housing market in the country surge. Today we got the data that U.S. home builders in January, the average number of new home orders per community surged to the highest level for the month since the housing recovery began in 2012. And yet underpinning this is a bifurcation in the market where you have an increasingly small component of affordable homes, particularly at the starter end. Joining us now, Paul Galvin, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of SG Blocks. It's a New York City-based sustainable construction firm repurposing shipping containers. I'm wondering, this has sort of been framed as a more affordable way to create housing. Are you seeing an uptick in interest as the supply gets smaller and smaller of affordable homes?
Yes, and thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here. At SG Blocks, we know the country has a housing crisis, but we really believe the country has a construction crisis, and that as the quality of construction continues to decrease, the price of construction continues to increase, and all of the high-end projects which are drawing the capital and the debt are creating a shortage of between 10 and 12 million houses for ordinary Americans, and that doesn't even count the dilapidated housing force that is basically illogical to repair. So it's a real crisis.
So these containers, these are the things I see stacked up like 20 high at the Port of Newark? Is that what we're talking about? Okay, yes. So you take those units. What do you do to them to make them into a housing unit?
Sure. So the containers themselves are code compliant for SG Blocks. We got them approved by the International Code Council in 2017. So it's the same as a brick or a piece of wood. We have a complete set of architectural drawings. We cut out windows, doors, and walls. We take that modified container. We run it through a finish factory, and that we're delivering your house well below budget in half the time, and your house is earthquake, hurricane, and tornado resistant.
Which regions of the country are most in need of affordable housing right now?
I would say it's twofold. One would be people that are in high-income areas, the San Franciscos, the LAs, the New Yorks, the Chicagos, where people are spending up to 70% of their income on housing, which puts them at risk of not being able to make choices on nutrition and food and medicine for family members. And then the other part of the country where we see people in need of housing in a big way are people that are in, I think it's 55% of Americans live at high risk of earthquake and hurricane and tornado. And so those houses are either partial or full repairs after every storm. The significance and the intensity of the weather patterns is further eroding what's an ordinary housing stock in our country.
How many of these units have you guys sold?
We have, since inception, delivered thousands of units to all 48 lower states, 4 continents. And our goal this year, through a license agreement with SG Residential and its spirited leader, Greg Jacobson, is we've created a $50,000 single container house that we've launched last week, the building of a prototype. And we're building about $100,000 house, 3 containers, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 4 boxes, and that prototype will be shipped into Puerto Rico, where I think we're the first company to get a container house approved. And so we're looking to head towards Guayama and build a prototype and help finish up some shells that were in disrepair at the time of the storm. Puerto Rico has had subsequent earthquakes. They have horrible tornadoes and storms. I hope they're smart and rebuild the island with steel.
Do you live in a container home?
Someday I will. Right now I live in Battery Park, so...
Well, I mean, do you think that there's appetite? And I know we talked about this before, but in some of the big metropolitan areas where there's a focus on the aesthetics, do you think that there's appetite to stack up containers and poke some holes in
I would say about 80% of the houses that we've built have been well over $1 million when they were finished. So, ironically. But... the only way to disrupt the monopoly...
Wait, hold on a second. I'm sorry. How is that affordable?
That's not affordable, but the cost of the house, the container is 10 or 15%. The rest of the cost is what you do with it. So we built a house in the Hamptons that's for sale now at $2.2 million, made out of the same container. For the house, we're selling for $50,000 to millennials and seniors who need to get their first foot on the housing rung or back on the housing rung for people living on fixed income.
How do you sell these things? What's your sales channel?
People listen to great shows like yours, and tomorrow we'll get so many people interested in sustainable construction and housing.
What about the homeless crisis?
The homeless crisis is where I originated. I spent 25 years running a homeless charity in New York, providing hundreds and hundreds of units of housing for homeless people with AIDS and victims of domestic violence. I started SG Blocks because traditional construction is corrupt, is overly priced, it's too slow. There's 2 ways to address the housing crisis. It's either subsidy, which is the government, or private market. If you use the government, it takes 4 years, and it's 3 times the cost. And the developer makes all the money and goes back out to the suburbs, and you have this half-built building. And the other way to deal with this is to do it through the private market, where you take an existing steel widget, and through proprietary technology, you can produce a house in 4 to 6 weeks that can be expanded as your income expands, as your family expands, and we could right-size American living.
Paul Galvin, thank you so much for joining us again. Paul Galvin, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of SG Blocks. Just a really fascinating story here about a new option, for housing, and particularly impactful when in certain markets we certainly have a housing crisis, particularly at the lower end. We've heard that from other buyers, a dearth of supply on the lower end for housing stock in this country. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, the Democratic race is on in Nevada.
I'm absolutely certain we're going to defeat Donald Trump.
He is a pre-existing condition we've got to take care of.
My name is Elizabeth Warren, and I'm the woman who's going to beat Donald Trump.
Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Elizabeth Warren will all take part in tonight's Democratic presidential debate in Las Vegas. So will Michael Bloomberg for the first time. Brown University political science chair Wendy Schiller says the former New York City mayor will face scrutiny from his opponents and voters.
I don't think he has to win the debate. I don't think that he has to, knock it out of the park. But he can't mess up. He can't say anything that even harkens back to some of the things that have been quoted, that he's been, said.
2 national polls out this morning show Sanders with double-digit leads over the rest of the Democratic field. We should note Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Looking ahead to Super Tuesday, one of the House managers from President Trump's Senate impeachment trial is endorsing Joe Biden. Texas Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia is the 6th member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the 43rd House lawmaker to back the former vice president. Texas is the second largest delegate state to award delegates on Super Tuesday, March 3rd. Several former patients of a University of Michigan team doctor who died more than a decade ago say he sexually abused them during exams going back decades. Now that university is asking for more information about Robert Anderson. He worked at Michigan from 1968 till his retirement in 2003. He died 5 years later. Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Had the same job for the last 15 years. Working with the same people, in the same office, drinking tea from the same comedy mug, eating the same crayfish and rocket sandwich every lunchtime, using the same business jargon, and climbing the same greasy pole. What does that even mean? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa. With its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone. It hits the foul pole.
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing. Gotta check me a vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back while Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Go to Babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are up after China launched fresh measures to support local businesses that are struggling because of the coronavirus outbreak. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.6% up 20. The Dow's up 0.5% up 142. And the NASDAQ is up 0.9% up 88. The 10-year is little changed with a yield of 1.56%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up over 2% now at $53.12 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 0.4% at $16.0960 an ounce. The dollar yen 111.15. The euro $1.798, and the British pound $1.2933. Add Morgan Stanley to the list of companies forced to change plans because of the coronavirus outbreak. The bank's 10th annual Hong Kong Investor Summit will become a virtual event instead of taking place at the firm's offices next month. That's according to a source who says they're virtually going to Hong Kong. I guess you could literally say they're virtually going to Hong Kong. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
This is the interview of the day. Roger McNamee, co-founder, Elevation Partners, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. We talk a lot about Facebook on this radio station, but maybe we don't talk enough about the impact that Facebook has on our daily lives, on privacy, on political elections in this country. That's going to change right now. Roger, thanks so much for joining us. Okay, Facebook taken to the cleaners by the public about the role that it played, knowingly or unknowingly, in the 2016 election in terms of allowing discourse to go in different directions. Have they learned their lesson as we gear up for the 2020 election?
Well, I'm afraid that the lesson that they've learned is not the lesson we want them to have learned.
Okay.
Right? We want them to have learned that democracy is too important to be damaged by the interests of any corporation. The one they've actually learned is that Facebook is global, that in many ways it's like a nation state, and as a result it has the power to ignore the needs of countries that it operates in. I mean, keep in mind, this is a company that has ignored subpoenas from the parliaments of the United Kingdom and Canada, which are two of its largest and most profitable markets. And so I think what's going on right now is that I think Mark has concluded that Facebook's future will be best assured by maintenance of the status quo, so to say, the re-election of President Trump. And, without being too obvious about it, I think they're making changes that at the margin are immensely valuable to the Trump campaign relative to other campaigns, specifically the decision to reverse the policy on fact-checking campaign ads. And there's an analogous one that they've done for Mayor Bloomberg, where they've chosen not to fact-check things done by influencers on Instagram and YouTube that are paid for by campaigns. And those are choices that in a normal democracy you wouldn't make. But at this moment in time, in this particular country, those are decisions Facebook has made with, at best, mild pushback.
Well, we did get some pushback from George Soros, the billionaire philanthropist and an investor, and he wrote a note in the Financial Times saying that Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg should be removed from their posts and saying they should not accept political advertising. Is there any other push that perhaps has a little more oomph than an op-ed in the Financial Times from George Soros, actually to get them to do that?
My hypothesis is that Mr. Soros was speaking mostly to the European Union, where I think his message has a welcome audience. I think he is enormously respected around the world, but particularly in Europe. The challenge that we face here, I think, simply put, is there are no countervailing forces in our democracy. We were designed to have three elements of government that push back on each other. We would have press that push back on all elements of government. You would have business and religion that push back on each other. And now the things that caused those to be in opposition to each other have broken down. And so, the Trump administration has put together an alliance with business and a portion of the religious world that has allowed it to withstand any pushback from journalists and has allowed it to defy 240 years of convention in operating the government. And that, I think we cannot overstate the profound impact that Google and Facebook have had in enabling that.
We should note that Michael Bloomberg is the founder and principal shareholder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg News and Bloomberg Radio. Roger, with all your experience in Silicon Valley, Silver Lake Partners, Elevation Partners, during all that time, the U.S. has taken a very light touch to regulating Silicon Valley and technology versus, say, the European Union going all the way back to Microsoft and things like that. Do you sense that is fundamentally changing at all? We've had some CEOs, including Mark Zuckerberg, brought in front of Congress. That's kind of new. That feels new. Do you think things are changing?
I believe that they have to change. I think the tech industry is today where the chemicals industry was in 1960, where the medicine industry was in 1900, or where the building trades were after the Great Chicago Fire, where these things are so strategic to the economy that you have to find a way to have them operate without doing great harm. And, the chemicals industry used to pour mercury into fresh water, and that had massive consequences for public health as well as for the environment. And we said, look, we're not going to allow that anymore. We're not going to allow you to just spew smoke into the atmosphere. And, you remember what New York City was like, in the 70s and early 80s when you couldn't see anything because of all the smog. And tech is now in that place, and we have to have some kind of regulation. And in my mind, we've tried self-regulation. That's failed miserably. And we really need to impose it from the outside. And it has to start, frankly, from the people who use the products, who have to recognize that there's a lot of harm being done to our children. There's a lot of harm being done to our family and friends, right? We can't have Thanksgiving dinner without getting into political fights. And these things are not an accident. They're part of the business model.
Roger, unfortunately, we only have about a minute left, but I do want to ask you, you were an early investor and a mentor to Mark Zuckerberg. Do you regret investing in it?
I wish that I had been more successful at persuading Mark in 2016 that there was a structural problem at Facebook.
Did you know there was?
I first observed it at the beginning of 2016. I wish I'd seen it sooner, but I had stopped being active there in 2009. And candidly, I was just enjoying the success of the company because in the early days, it just felt like this was one of the really great new companies. And Mark's value system in those days had no negative manifestations that you could see, or at least that I saw. But when I started to see the problems in 2016, I then reached out to him in October and said, Mark, there is something structurally wrong with the business model, the algorithms, and the culture that's allowing bad people to hurt innocent people. I gave him some examples from civil rights, and then I really focused on both what I saw in the Democratic primary with disinformation, but especially Brexit, where you could see that disinformation had almost certainly affected the outcome. And I spent 3 months pleading with them, beginning before the election and then continuing for months afterwards, as their friend, just saying, look, you got to treat this like Johnson & Johnson treated the Tylenol poisoning. You got to come to the defense of the people who use the product. This is America.
And he didn't listen.
Well, apparently not.
Roger McNamee, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a great pleasure.
Tremendous speaking with you. Roger McNamee is co-founder of Elevation Partners based in Menlo Park, but joining us here in our Interactive Brokers studios, an early mentor, an investor in Facebook. Really interesting insight into the current election cycle and the possibility that Facebook will play a similar role heading into it in terms
starting
of
to
accepting.
get more, in addition to Roger, starting to get more attention, I think, from a lot of different walks of life.
We will carry the conversation forward with Bloomberg Balance of Power that is coming up next on Bloomberg Radio.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings.
The government and the NHS are prepared to deal with coronavirus. You can help too. The best way to protect yourself and others is to wash your hands with soap and water or use a sanitizer gel regularly throughout the day. Catch your cough or sneeze in a tissue, bin it, and wash your hands. If you have recently arrived back from specified areas, follow the returning traveller advice. Check the list of areas and find out more at nhs.uk/coronavirus.
TSB's Fix and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000. Subject to status, UK residents only over 21. Based on de facto data, January 2020.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive this weekend. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Wendy Benjaminson in Washington, D.C. on the 9th Democratic debate tonight in Nevada. Somi Kamarudin in Hong Kong on the latest developments surrounding the coronavirus. And Maria Tadeo in Brussels on the push for European Commission to regulate digital taxes there. Okay, so let's start with you, Wendy. Bring us up to speed on the polls. A lot of polls out these days. What are they telling us?
There are a lot of polls out there, David. There seems to be one every few minutes from our perspective. But it is showing one very clear thing, that Bernie Sanders right now is the undisputed frontrunner for the Democratic nomination. He is leading by double digits, as this chart shows, well outside the margin of error in just about every national poll and polls of key states like California, which votes, of course, on March 3rd, Super Tuesday. And then the next few places in the field are really muddled. It could be Joe Biden, it could be Elizabeth Warren, it could be Michael Bloomberg. Those are sort of, and even Pete Buttigieg is in there still. So it's really hard to tell who's coming up behind Sanders, but Sanders is clearly in the front spot.
So one of the things we always look at polls are not just where they are right now, but where they're moving from and to. Are we getting any indications of momentum? You mentioned Mike Bloomberg. He, of course, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg, but is he moving? Is Bernie Sanders moving? Is that why he's up on top?
Yes, I mean, Bernie Sanders has sort of run with the momentum that he picked up from winning the New Hampshire primary and doing very well in Iowa. And he is drawing crowds both in California and Nevada, where they're having caucuses this Saturday. So he is drawing crowds in the tens of thousands, not quite as many as he had when there was just him and Hillary Clinton in 2016, but far bigger crowds than any of the other Democratic candidates. And he is hammering away at the centrists in the race, mostly Michael Bloomberg, who seems to be, or Sanders is taking him as the embodiment of everything that Sanders is not, or Sanders stands against, and then a little after the others too. And the rest are really just struggling to catch up.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you so much to Wendy Benjaminson. She's our political editor in Washington, D.C. And now we're going to Sophie Camarudin over in Hong Kong for a report on the coronavirus. So it's starting to hit businesses over there. I know tourism, airlines are being hit particularly.
Yeah, Bloomberg learning that the Hainan government is in talks with the H&A Group. It's a conglomerate that pivoted back in November to focus on its aviation business, and that looks to have backfired, essentially, given the impacts that daily travel has seen in China, now dwindling to about a fifth of its usual level for this time of year. And so, broadly speaking, Chinese authorities, they're looking to support the aviation sector on the mainland with some measures including possible mergers and a bailout package that could be worth billions of dollars, David.
So what other businesses are being hit? And particularly, there's a lot of tendency over here to sort of say, well, it's a first quarter issue. By the second quarter, we'll be okay. Is that the sense with respect to Chinese companies?
Well, consumer activity is a big indicator when it comes to that impact on companies, with shoppers largely staying at home and holding back from spending. We've heard from names like Adidas and Puma speaking to the dent in sales they've seen in recent weeks. Adidas, for example, seeing an 85% slump in business since January 25th. This in the face of store closures and staffing limitations. And household spending may be further weighed as well, David, if employers hold back on wages, and that adds to pressure on policymakers to provide support for companies and to keep employment stable. And so on Tuesday, we did see the Chinese government announce temporary waivers or cuts to Social Security contributions through June, providing then a bit of a buffer then to restore production, David.
Okay, Sophie, thank you for your continued terrific, report from Hong Kong. That's Sophie Camarudin, our colleague over in Hong Kong. And now we go to Maria Tadeo in Brussels, because it seems like it's a digital week over there for the EU, Maria. And I know you caught up with Margaret Vestager, both about the possibility of regulation, but also a digital tax. Tell us what you learned.
Well, this has been a huge week for technology here in the European Union. You do see the EU trying to get ahead of regulation when it comes to digital services, a digital tax, regulation of the internet and social media. What is interesting is this morning I spoke to Margaret Vestager, who made a very detailed presentation today, and she told me that when it comes to tax reform on the digital space, she's actually much more optimistic than she was a year ago now, saying that U.S. companies finally get they have to pay more tax in Europe. Let's take a look.
They find that it's kind of tricky if each member state make their own system, because then they have to deal with one set of rules in one country and another set of rules in another country, and maybe it's just easier to say, well, this is how it's done in Europe, one stop, here you go, this is the taxes you have to pay.
And that's Margaret Vestager, the European Commissioner. What is interesting there, and just to give you some context, David, she's talking about a tax at an OECD level for digital services. She's saying what's changed now is that U.S. companies do get that there will be tax reform, that they will have to pay more taxes in Europe, but it's best if they do it on a global picture rather than to have to pay in different countries with different regulations, different jurisdictions. They would just rather pay one single tax rate. And that is perhaps why Vestager is now more optimistic than she was a year ago. Of course, course, we know this is an ongoing situation here in Europe where the French are pushing really hard to get this done before the end of the year at the OECD. If there's no agreement at that level, there's a number of countries in Europe saying we're going to have to go at it alone. U.S. tech will have to pay more tax in Europe.
Okay, thank you so very much to Maria Tadeo over in Brussels. And now it's time where we check in on the markets and see how they are reacting to today's top stories. Joining us now is Abigail Doolittle. So a little green here.
Quite a bit of green, really a risk-on feel, which is pretty amazing considering the continuing coronavirus tragedy. It seems as though there's a real disconnect or decoupling between these risk assets and the possibility that what we've seen in terms of companies saying that their outlooks are being affected by this tragedy, that it is they're weighing in saying that that's not going to matter, which it seems a little bit early to make that sort of an assessment, but nonetheless, the bull's in charge.
Yeah, people are afraid of being left out, I think.
Yes, a little
somebody
bit of FOMO.
Bounces back, exactly, for fear of missing out, exactly right. What about sectors? Are there some sectors that are particularly strong today?
Yes, absolutely, and tech is really the leading sector, helped out by the chips. The chips up in a big way, up more than 2%, and that has everything to do with China because a lot of those chip companies, their supply chains deeply embedded in China, lots of revenues coming from China, so the fact that you have greater strength there and more so than the declines yesterday. Apple is also leading the charge back today. Again, suggests investors are looking past what this coronavirus could really mean. Let's hope that they're right. But if they're not and the numbers continue to get cut after a quarter or two, it could really create a problem for those bulls that are continue to buy on that fear of missing out.
Yeah, at some point we need the earnings to come through.
Yes.
Always
the numbers.
Exactly,
yes.
Ultimately. Okay. Many thanks now to Abigail Doolittle for that report on the markets. And now we turn to Mark Crumpton for Bloomberg First Word News.
David, Democratic presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg faces his rivals in person for the first time tonight in Las Vegas. He'll take part in his first debate. The latest national poll has Bloomberg in second place with 19%. Bernie Sanders leads the way at 31%. Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News. A senior Pentagon official who reportedly warned Defense Department officials against withholding aid to Ukraine is stepping down. John Rood certified last year that the Defense Department had seen enough anti-corruption progress in Ukraine to justify releasing the aid that Congress had authorized. Rood's letter of resignation did not mention Ukraine, but said he was leaving at President Trump's request. The administration's delay in releasing the aid was central to the president's impeachment. About 500 passengers left the cruise ship Diamond Princess today at the end of a 2-week quarantine aboard the vessel, which docked in Japan. The quarantine failed to stop the spread of the coronavirus among passengers and crew. 79 more cases were announced, bringing the total on the ship to 629. Japan's government has been criticized over its decision to keep people on the ship, which some experts have called a perfect virus incubator. China is looking at ways to help airlines hurt by the coronavirus outbreak. Bloomberg has learned that Beijing is considering measures such as mergers and direct cash injections. One proposal would allow the biggest Chinese airlines to absorb smaller ones who have been hurt the most. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up here, we're going to set the stage for the Democratic debate out in Nevada tonight. We're going to go live to Las Vegas. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Discover Ireland's wild Atlantic way with Aer Lingus. Fly London to the west of Ireland from $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. Enjoy breathtaking scenery, taste fresh seafood, and explore wild coastal walks. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness.
For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer. And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
TSB's Fixed and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. And the freedom to pay more whenever you want. Or even take a break if you like. Because no one can really predict what the future holds. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000, subject to status, UK residents only, over 21. Based on de facto data January 2020. Up to 2 repayment holidays a year subject to approval.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive this weekend. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
A contrast with former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, but don't count out former Vice President Joe Biden. I've been talking with sources connected to his campaign. They actually feel that clash potentially between Sanders and Bloomberg could ultimately, in the long run, potentially benefit Joe Biden. However, beyond that, former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, they're also going to be trying to have some type of breakout moment. But this is the first time Bloomberg will be on the stage after spending a bevy of money in a host of different ads. And there's now been criticism lodged in his direction.
So Kevin, let me put you on the spot. If you were going to guess right now, between Bernie Sanders, the Senator for Bernie Sanders, and Mike Bloomberg, which is going to take the most shots tonight? Which are people going to really train their fire on?
Well, listen, just based upon the reporting, David, here's what I can tell you. There's a morning console poll that just came out within the last 2 hours. And what that poll suggested is that right now, Bernie Sanders beats all of the other candidates amongst likely Democratic voters in who is the most electable candidate. That's counter narrative to the opposition that's come out from all of the other campaigns. But we'll have to wait and see. But either way, usually they save these type of debates for South Carolina, David. Yeah. But it looks like it's Viva Las Vegas, the showdowns later tonight.
Well, it certainly will be tonight, Viva Las Vegas. But as you say, we have South Carolina and then Super Tuesday. I assume that the candidates will try to stay in at least through Super Tuesday. But as a practical matter, who is this coming close to make or break for?
Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, both of those campaigns have said that they are in it for the long run. Based upon the sources that I talked to, I really don't see, David, much pressure on any of the candidates to get out of the race before Super Tuesday, just because there's this open-end question of really unpredictability. There's so much volatility in this race, and there just seems to be this unpredictable nature baked in to it. So really, I don't really think that you're going to see a winnowing of the field before Super Tuesday.
Okay, thanks so much to Kevin. That's Kevin Cirilli out in Las Vegas. He's going to be hosting his radio program Sound On at 5 p.m. Eastern Time from Las Vegas. For more on the debate, we welcome now Bloomberg political contributor Jeannie Zaino, political science professor at Iona College and senior advisor to applied economics. So, Jeannie, great to be back with you. Give us your sense of what we should be looking for as we watch tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we saw in New Hampshire that the debate really mattered, in particular for Amy Klobuchar and Mayor Pete Buttigieg. So I think tonight we're looking, number one, to see, does Bernie Sanders go on the offense or does he go on the defense? Is he under attack as much as he probably should be given the poll numbers, because he is leading in every poll? The other thing I think we need to watch for is, we hear a lot about the, sort of debates going to be contentious between Bloomberg and Sanders, but we really should see Elizabeth Warren go after Bernie Sanders. We can't forget Mike Bloomberg is not on the ballot in Nevada. The other 5 are. And so we want to see, for those people on the ballot who really need a win out there, in particular, Elizabeth Warren and, of course, Amy Klobuchar, do they take the gloves off tonight, particularly against the leader?
Has Bernie Sanders ever really come under attack thus far? He may be the leader, but I'm not sure when he came under attack. And we have Harry Reid, the former majority leader of the Senate, spoke to our Josh Green, actually, and said, it's time somebody went after Bernie Sanders, not because I have anything against him, but he needs to be tested.
He absolutely, and that's where Elizabeth Warren really should have, and I think she'd be doing better in the polls if she had. They had sort of, a sort of non-compete clause there. Yeah. She's really got to come out tonight swinging against the person who is taking the most votes from her, and that is Bernie Sanders. The others can vie for that moderate wing. Bernie Sanders, in my mind, seems to have a ceiling here. There are more votes on the moderate side, but it's a more crowded field. But for Elizabeth Warren, she needs to take Bernie Sanders on tonight.
Those candidates, whoever they are on the debate stage tonight, are they thinking more about Nevada and the caucus coming up on Saturday? Or are they really looking forward to Super Tuesday and even the more global national stage?
I think, when you're in the lead, you have the money, and in the lead like Bernie Sanders, you could take a more, long-term perspective. But some of these candidates like Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, sure, I think Kevin's right, they're going to stay in at least through Super Tuesday. But they really need to show they can win. And somebody else who needs to show that they can at least place or do well is Joe Biden. You can't run your campaign on electability, and now you're in the third state you're on the ballot on, and you're not showing that you can at least place high. He had a really tough time in both Iowa and New Hampshire.
Well, Joe Biden's got to win someplace, right?
He's got to win someplace. South Carolina is really it for him. I mean, I don't think he's going to win Nevada, but I think he's got to come in at least third to show that he's viable.
Now, as I understand, Nevada has a significant Hispanic or Latino population. Which way does that cut? Who appeals to Latinos or Hispanics at this point? I know that there was some concern about the Culinary Union, which I think has a lot of Hispanics in it, being really dubious about Bernie Sanders because of his health care proposal.
Yeah, and we'd seen the Latino vote going Bernie Sanders' way, but I think what you're raising about the union vote, the union members depend so much on the health care, and Bernie Sanders' program really does cut into that, which is why the Culinary Union came out in the way that they did. And of course, then they complained that they were under attack by the quote-unquote Bernie bros. Mm-hmm. So that's been a contention out there. So I think the moderates can use that to their advantage. And I suspect tonight we will see a back and forth, as we have in the previous debates, about these issues of Medicare for all and what that's going to mean for these union members who are such a key constituency out there. And I think we should also remember Nevada has had early voting. It's done now, but a lot of people, they said the numbers were big early voting. So a lot of voters have cast their ballot already.
Absolutely. Early voting in a caucus.
In a caucus. Yeah.
Which is, I understand that they actually say what their first, second, and third choices, or something like that.
Yeah.
We had a not very comfortable experience when we went to Iowa with caucuses. How confident are we that we actually get some results that we can rely upon?
We're hearing from the head of the Democratic Party that it's going to be smooth, but of course we heard that going into Iowa. It was anything but. There are people who are wondering how this is going to go. If the Democrats don't have a smooth night Saturday night or Saturday, it's going to be a problem for the Democrats if they can't get this caucus right.
Jeannie, do we have any sense of the fundraising at this point? I mean, Bernie Sanders has been doing well with a large number of small donors. Mike Bloomberg doesn't need the money. He says he doesn't want the money. But do we know where the others are?
So we do know that Amy Klobuchar, she has seen an increase since her strong performance in New Hampshire. We know Joe Biden is struggling enormously, trying to hang on to the donors he has and say to keep coming with the money. Elizabeth Warren is in a similar position to Joe Biden. You know, Bernie Sanders can go the distance. He raises from small donors who he can go back to over and over. He clearly has enough money. Mayor Pete has been fundraising a lot, but he needs to do better if he's going to continue when this breaks out on Super Tuesday.
Okay, last question. Who has the most to win tonight?
I think the person that has the most to win, not the most to lose.
No, not the one to most lose. What's the win? Who's the biggest upside opportunity?
I think the biggest upside opportunity would probably be in Amy Klobuchar in my mind. I really think, if she can show once again that she can break this out, she might be able to push the moderates over. I don't know if that's going to happen, but she's a great debater.
She is a great debater. There's no question about that. Everyone agrees to that. Okay, thank you so much to Bloomberg contributor Jeannie Zaino. Always great to be with Jeannie. Now, some breaking news right now from the aviation industry. Airbus is cutting more than 2,300 jobs in its defense and space unit over the next 2 years. A majority of the cuts are going to be in Germany and in Spain. This as the company embarks on a restructuring plan for the unit. Still ahead here, NVIDIA is our stock of the hour. Shares of the chipmaker are rising after it gets an analyst upgrade. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Our relationship with Asia is simple. Find the most experienced journalists.
These countries will need each other more and more in the future.
Let them gather the best data and experts.
Let's get to Singapore now and our guest.
Then bring everything they find straight to you.
Let's talk about where you are. There's quite a lot of headwinds there too.
Actually, it's not simple. It's just better. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It's time now for the stock of the hour. NVIDIA is one of the best day of the day's best performers. Let's put it that way. The stock is surging more than 5% and trading at a fresh record high after an analyst upgrade. Katie Lyons is here with more, and she'll get it out straight.
I'll try my best. So the analyst is over at Bernstein, raised it to outperform and also upped his price target to a street high of $360. Now, the reason for this is that he sees two near-term catalysts. One is the pending acquisition of Mellanox, which hasn't cleared yet. It's been cleared in the U.S. and the EU, still awaiting approval from China, but the company seems pretty confident, saying it'll come early in 2020. So he sees that as a coming catalyst, and the other being the Analyst Investor Day that is also coming up. He said that it was an error not to return to a bullish stance on this stock sooner, because NVIDIA just really looks to be on a strong footing, and this is a stock that really has been on a tear this year. It's the second best performer in the S&P 500 year to date, up about 33% nearly. Of course, it had a really big blowout earnings report last quarter. Strength in video gaming, strength in data centers, a pretty strong outlook, and all of that comes in the face of the coronavirus, which, as we know, NVIDIA is exposed to, considering China makes up about a quarter of its overall sales, rallying in spite of that.
So help me with that just a little bit. Do they get supplies out of China? Is there a supply chain issue potentially in the coronavirus for them in China?
There's a supply chain issue. They're really tied closely with Taiwan Semiconductors, and they are potentially at risk because of this coronavirus. We've seen the likes of Apple, plenty of warnings coming out of this space in relation to the virus, and then of course that it is a big revenue market for them. Now, that said, There is this idea prevailing, not just for NVIDIA, but semiconductors across the board, that this is going to be a temporary issue, that this is maybe one quarter, that things are going to turn around. And unlike with some other things, when we think about retail or restaurants, other or travel companies that are suffering, you're not necessarily, if you were on lockdown during the virus, going to take 4 trips to make up for the fact that you didn't travel over the Lunar New Year holiday. You may still buy chips because the demand is still there. What we've seen from earnings from NVIDIA and others is that demand is looking strong. Their growth seems to be coming back. And so it's kind of this idea that maybe we're not going to get it in the first quarter, but we will get it throughout the remainder of the year. And that has led the SOX index to touch records.
And Kay, that's something of a larger theme, I think, that people are saying first quarter is going to be rough. Right. After that, we're going to be okay again. That's not just true with chips, not true with NVIDIA, their chips more broadly. The companies must not be guiding away from that. Because if they had a different thought, they would be warning people, wait a second quarter looks weak as well.
Right, exactly. And I mean, take a company like NVIDIA when they reported last week, they said, yes, we had to take down our revenue estimates by about $100 million because of the virus. But A, that's only 3% of the revenue they're expecting in the quarter. And B, that is as far as they went. That said, obviously, the virus is a huge unknown at this point. No one really knows where it will end. And so it's, I think, harder to look out over the longer term. But they're saying, here's what the near term impact looks like. And we think at this point, considering all of the things that have been done, not only from a containment perspective, but also China trying to boost economic growth, get that consumption back, maybe it will be a short-term issue.
Yeah, but even if it was boosting growth, you got to get people back into the plants making this stuff.
Right.
It's a practical matter. And I'm not sure if we know yet how long it'll take to get back into the plants, even if we think the virus is tapering off.
Right. I mean, I've heard reports from our reporters here from Bloomberg Economic Analysis that maybe half of China's production is back online after the shutdown. So there's certainly still a long way to go. Okay. Time will tell.
Okay, and you'll be here to tell us about it. Okay, thanks so much to Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons. Up next, how does the coronavirus compare with the SARS virus of 2003? We asked Jennifer Wong Bowie of the Rand Corporation. That's going to be coming up. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are posting gains on signs that China is planning measures to support its economy as it reels from the impact of the coronavirus. Chip makers are leading today's advance. The Dow is up 139 points, S&P up 19, the Nasdaq climbing 87 points. U.S. economic indicators are pretty upbeat. Prices paid by companies are rising at a faster pace. The Producer Price Index was up 2.1% from a year ago. Well, here's a sign of a healthy housing market. New home construction remained active last month, and applications to build homes jumped to its highest level in 13 years. And the biggest auto lender is getting into the credit card business. Ally Financial has agreed to buy subprime lender CardWorks for $2.7 billion. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Revisions, return policies. There are so many ways to redo a decision.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Do they have any path other than the courts?
Except here, we have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war. Are there winners?
So that you can too.
How does your modeling have to pivot to reflect a different scenario?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, President Trump heads to Arizona tonight, where he's set to rally voters. The Republican-leaning state has voted for Democrats in only 8 presidential elections since 1912. But political experts say an influx of new residents could challenge the president's hold on the state. One of the most important Arizona counties to President Trump's re-election prospects is Maricopa, which includes Phoenix, the location of Mr. Trump's rally. Turkey is criticizing the European Union for its efforts to enforce the UN arms embargo around Libya. President Recep Erdogan says EU nations who agree to a maritime operation in the region are interfering in a dispute where they have no authority. Libya has been in turmoil since 2011 when a civil war toppled longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi. The country is now split between rival governments. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, is predicting a rebound in global growth despite the coronavirus outbreak. The fund says the global economy appears to be bottoming out. Still, it says risks dominate the outlook. Those include the virus and trade tensions. Jurors are deliberating for a second day at Harvey Weinstein's rape trial here in New York. Jurors asked the judge for clarification in the testimony of a former television and film production assistant who says Weinstein sexually assaulted her in 2006. At least 100 women have accused the former movie mogul of sexual abuse, but this trial involves accusations from 2 women. Weinstein says any sexual conduct was consensual. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is...
Thanks so much, Mark. More now on that coronavirus. This isn't the first time that China has had to deal with a viral epidemic. And in trying to project where the deadly virus is headed this time, experts look back to the past for guidance, and most specifically to 2003 and the SARS epidemic.
SARS was a killer, both literally and economically. SARS, or Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, killed almost 800 people in 2003. It also knocked 2 full percentage points off China's growth. GDP rose 11.1% in the first quarter of 2003, but dropped to 9.1% in the second. SARS hurt China and its neighbors, but the country's relatively small weight limited the global economic impact. Back in 2003, China's GDP was 4% of the global total. Now it's 17%, which means any drop now will hit harder. Bloomberg economists have drawn up scenarios for the potential impact. The latest outbreak occurred during the Lunar New Year holiday, a peak time for consumption in China. And reduced spending won't be recouped. Current travel restrictions are also much wider than those imposed in 2003. So if the outbreak is contained quickly, growth that might be hammered in the first quarter could recover later in 2020. That would put full-year growth at 5.7%, 0.2% below Bloomberg's original forecast. But if the outbreak persists, the damage to growth would be more severe, and neighbors would be hit harder, especially in Hong Kong, South Korea, and Vietnam.
We welcome now an expert who has compared SARS with the coronavirus. Jennifer Huang Bui is Senior Policy Researcher at the RAND Corporation and testified before Congress on the similarities and differences between SARS and the current crisis. She comes to us today from Washington. So thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your being here. Give us a sense of where we are in the life of the virus, and can we tell anything from the SARS pattern about where we think we are in the life of the coronavirus?
Right. When SARS hit China 17 years ago, it was the world is a very different place. At the time, for example, it took a few months for the WHO to realize that the typical pneumonia that happens in China actually links to the outbreak in Vietnam and Hong Kong. So it took the world longer to realize that there's an epidemic and later becomes a SARS pandemic. This time, I think for the coronavirus, the Chinese scientists identified this as a new virus pretty early on, but there were some delays in December and January for China's government to trigger the national case reporting system. So now we see that we certainly see most of the cases are still in Wuhan, in the Hubei province, and 25 countries has cases. Now, mostly those are the cases from travelers from China. So I think the next couple of weeks will be pretty critical because this is a time that many of the people are going back to work from the Lunar New Year break, even though the Chinese government has postponed the starting of the factory, and most of the country are still in lockdown. But I think we'll gradually seeing the productivity coming back, and this is also the time that people travels. So I think the case number in the next couple of weeks will be critical to decide, whether the China can contain this virus for the first quarter, or maybe this will spill up to the next quarter.
How do you evaluate the degree of cooperation or lack thereof between the Chinese government and international authorities, whether it's WHO or it's U.S. healthcare officials, other healthcare officials, compared with the SARS virus? Are they being much more cooperative?
I think compared to SARS, again, the world is a very different place now. In 2003, during SARS, China really worked on its own. It's not. They did notify WHO in February that there were pneumonia outbreaks, but by then the WHO didn't even link that to the outbreaks outside. So this time, I think China is working with WHO closely. So right now there's an expertise group that's working in China, and including some American public health experts. But I have to say that after SARS, there was a period that the U.S. CDC has worked closely with China CDC, and they basically work side by side on several epidemics between SARS and the coronavirus. The swine flu, the avian flu, Ebola, HIV/AIDS. There were lots of collaboration in the past, and there were some slowing down in the last couple of years.
Tell us about the treatment, how to treat people who are ill, but also how to curtail further expansion. Where are we on that? I mean, there's talk about a vaccine, but as a practical matter, as I understand, that takes a good long time.
Yeah, the vaccine for a new virus usually takes about a year. So if we can see a first phase 1 trial in 3 months, that's quite amazing. So I don't think that the vaccine will be a good tool for the immediate outbreak. The treatment is also in experiments. There's a trial, phase 3 trial in China right now on a anti-coronavirus treatment. So without a vaccine, without a good treatment or proven treatment, all we left is social distancing. So that's why we see a lot of quarantine implementation and travel bans. And I have to say these are the methods we have to maybe slow down the transmission, but they will not stop the transmission. So I hope for every country is using this time to gear up their public health and health care system to battle this virus. But eventually, I think, I hope, the vaccine and treatment will come to help.
Okay, thank you so very much for your time today. That's Jennifer Wong Bowie. She's with the RAND Corporation. Coming up, Attorney General William Barr remains in the news with calls for his resignation after the dispute over the Roger Stone sentencing. We talk with a former Barr colleague in the Justice Department, Donald Ayer, who served in the number 2 job there under President George Herbert Walker Bush. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
leaders are...
The famous five were discussing their next adventure to Bristol. "Let's visit Clifton Suspension Bridge," said Dick. "SS Great Britain," added Julian. "The harbour," cried Anne. Dick jumped up. "We'd better leave now. Bristol's so far away." "Relax," said George. "It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pyjamas." London to Bristol in as little as 68 minutes. So adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Fastest train from Paddington to Bristol Parkway. Terms and conditions apply.
The moment you realise that radiator isn't warming up, it's chilly in London, and half the class are coming for a sleepover. The moment you realise you've got British Gas home care boiler cover from 46p a day, including parts and labour. So the moment you have a problem, make it our problem. And if you buy selected home care products online by the 24th of February, you'll get a gift card worth up to £75 to treat yourself. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas home care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
Do you do the same thing every weekend? You know, meet up with the same friends for brunch, browse around the same shops, eat the same Saturday night takeaway. Mine's a lamb balti with mushroom pilau rice. Snuggle up next to the same person and watch the same brain-numbing reality TV. Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go. From opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Who is largely, if not entirely, unchecked by the usual checks and balances. He has had those views a very long time, but it's only in the last year that he's been able, as Attorney General, to move ahead with a whole series of initiatives that really bring that much closer to a reality and I think leave a lot of people, certainly including me, and especially this last week when it's begun to creep into the area of bias and influence being injected into the criminal process, where it's quite distressing to see what's happening to our system. One of the things I said in the article that I wrote in The Atlantic earlier this week is that Bill Barr essentially is un-American. And the reason I said that is because he genuinely has a view that the president is and should be above the law. And I say that based on conduct, which I could elaborate greatly on, but also on very specific words that he wrote in a memo when he was communicating with the Justice Department back before he became Attorney General in a June 2018 memo, essentially saying that the president is the executive branch and has complete power over all of the processes in the Justice Department and is free to do that. In fact, has no real option but to be in control of that. And indeed, the words that he used in that memo are not very far from the words the president has used in the last few days, saying that he has the power to interfere in criminal processes.
So if we could, let's separate out the way you just did, which is to say conduct versus words, and we don't have to go through all the conduct, but give me one or two instances where you believe that the Attorney General has done something and taken action that is either illegal or inconsistent with his oath.
Well, I think that the first thing most people became aware of was the introduction he gave to the country about the Mueller report back in March of this year. Before it was made public, he issued a 4-page summary letter which didn't discuss the facts at all, but stated a categorical legal conclusion that there was no sufficient evidence of obstruction of justice. Well, clearly when that report came out and people who understand evidence and obstruction read it, they saw that there was quite a bit of evidence that the president had obstructed justice. Another example is of interfering with the usual and regular processes of the department was, back in December when the Inspector General for the Justice Department issued the report of his, I think, year and a half or so investigation of the FBI investigation into the Russian interference in our election. The prime conclusion, the central point of that was looking at whether that investigation had been proper. And the Inspector General did find that some warrants were improperly submitted and FBI agents were guilty of some misconduct in connection with those warrants. No question about that, and it was serious. But the overarching conclusion was that there was plenty of evidence to justify initiating the investigation, and the overall oversight and decision-making about the investigation had been done properly and without bias. And when that came out, Attorney General Barr and also his the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut who's assisting him, Mr. Durham, both announced their view that that was incorrect. They basically overruled or stated their disagreement with that report. Now, there are many things that have been done along the way this year to essentially undermine the checks and balances of our government. A lot of them have to do with stonewalling Congress in connection with various inquiries. There's a tradition and a practice that's well established. Congress can ask for information and get it subject to individual objections based on executive privilege, which have to be ruled on by a court. And the approach that this administration has taken and that Attorney General Barr and his Justice Department have pursued is a fairly substantial blanket stonewalling of all of that, with a number of OLC legal opinions issued to support various things, including, for example, resisting the Treasury Department, resisting the Hill's request for the president's tax returns, which a statute says they have a right to have. Anyway, there's a whole lot more. I know you don't run on forever.
No, well, actually, the Atlantic piece is a terrific piece. I read it all. It's very well done. Could I just come back to the first thing you mentioned, which is the Mueller report and not actually prosecuting for obstruction of justice? There's broad, as you know better than anyone, prosecutorial discretion vested in the Attorney General, and he took a look at it and said, okay, fine, I read what's been said. I don't think that I can bring a case and win a case on that. Was that outside the range of his prosecutorial discretion? Because after all, as I recall the facts, the president had instructed some people to do some things that they actually did not follow through and do. You could say it's an attempted obstruction of justice, but was that really outside of his prosecutorial discretion?
Well, I think actually, you know, to be honest with you, I mean, so a whole lot of people, including me, signed a letter at that time saying, you got to be kidding, there's overwhelming evidence of obstruction of justice here. I actually think that the only conceivable way that Mr. Barr could have reached the conclusion he did, and my guess is this is what in fact happened, was by substituting his view of the president's constitutional powers as the governing law. And that view was the one he expressed in the memo back in June of 2018 when he, in arguing that the Mueller investigation, the whole thing was basically ill-conceived, he essentially said the president, and these are his words, the president is the executive branch. The president has complete control over everything that goes on in the Justice Department, including the right to oversee both criminal investigations and indeed a criminal investigation that was into his own personal behavior. And so I think the only way that Mr. Barr could conceivably rationalize his decision, but he didn't tell us this when he wrote the letter or when he gave his press conference, was because he doesn't really think the president can be guilty of obstruction at all if what he's doing is interfering with an act of his own Justice Department. He thinks the president has the right to do anything he wants.
Yep. So, which may be where the conduct hooks back up with the words. Really well put. Okay, many thanks to former Deputy Attorney General Donald Ayer. We're going to have more with him coming up in the 1:30 and the Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information sooner?
What does this tell us about the state of deal making?
Let's fix that.
One unprofitable company plus another doesn't make a profitable company.
Carol Mazur.
Talk to us about real-world applications.
Jason Kelly.
Remind us what the potential is for everyday folk.
Bloomberg Business Week.
Vice President of Exploratory Science is one of the cooler titles.
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
Only you can prevent wildfires.
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Afghanistan's incumbent president, Ashraf Ghani, has been declared the winner in the country's presidential election. That was after 4 months of disputes over alleged voter fraud. President Ghani spoke at the Munich Security Conference over the weekend and framed the election as a vital step in the peace process with the Taliban.
1, we must stop this war. 2, we must find a political solution to stop the war. The rest is a level of complexity and uncertainty. The critical test is going to be, will the Taliban accept an election as the mechanism, the crucial mechanism of referring to the Afghan people, or do they still have a view of conquest?
For more on what's going on in Afghanistan, we welcome now former Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs, retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, joining us from Washington. So great to have you back with us, General. So give us a sense, is this declaration of the re-election of Mr. Ghani, is it a step forward in the peace process?
Well, actually, it's a step backwards. As you know, the United States and the Taliban have negotiated directly. The Taliban have refused to have the Afghan government included in those negotiations. They were able to get away with that as long as there wasn't an elected government. Now that President Ghani has been reelected, I would suspect that he will try to inject and in some ways interfere in the peace negotiations to make sure that the voice of the Afghan people are heard.
So where is the process of the peace, so-called peace process right now? There was a ceasefire, I guess, essentially called for a limited period of time. Where does that stand right now, General?
Well, it's about to go into place. What Khalilzad, the negotiator, wants to see on the American side is he wants to see that the negotiators can actually control the generals on the ground. That has been a great debate over the past few months, as whatever the negotiators have said, the Taliban generals have refused to uphold. But it's a larger issue, which is if, in fact, they are able to get a ceasefire for a short period of time, there's a suggestion that the Americans will sign this agreement to withdraw. And I think most people who have watched Afghanistan for quite some time realize that that's not an agreement we want to be making.
Well, what comes next? If, in fact, we do sign that agreement, would it include our withdrawing all of our troops from there? And what prevents it once again being a base for the launching of terrorist acts?
No, that's exactly right, and that's the concern that everybody has. Look, this is a negotiation that everybody wants to see signed, but nobody wants to uphold. The Taliban insists the Americans get out and never come back. And the Americans say, we'll do that if the Taliban will ensure this doesn't turn into a safe haven for terrorism. Well, neither are going to uphold that. The Americans may withdraw, but our policy is we will go anywhere at any time to destroy terrorist threats against the United States. And the Taliban, candidly, don't have the ability to make sure that Afghanistan doesn't remain a threat to the United States. Groups like ISIS are in there, and the Taliban have no control over ISIS.
So what is your advice to the U.S. government right now about what they should be doing in there? I mean, believe it's the longest war in U.S. history. Should we be staying with troops?
Well, I think a number of former ambassadors, many who I have nothing but the highest respect for, believe that the right way to do this is not withdraw and hope that the Taliban will live up to their commitments. What the negotiation ought to focus on is leaving a small number of Americans behind to ensure the Taliban realize that not only the terrorists being placed in check, but the Taliban are as well, to see and ensure that they will hold up their side of the bargain. And if they don't, we should stay with that small number to defeat the terrorist threats there.
Okay, thank you so much, retired Brigadier General Mark Crimley. We're going to have more with him coming up in our second hour on Bloomberg Radio. We're also going to be doing a preview of the Fed Minutes, which come out at 2 p.m. this afternoon. That's all coming up on Balance of Power. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. As many shopping malls in the United States struggle, downsize, even close altogether, American Dream, the 2 decades in the making mega mall, is about to open its doors to shoppers. Much is riding on the $5 billion retail behemoth, which sits across the river in New Jersey from Manhattan. It's employing about 17,000 people to staff 450 stores, restaurants, and amusement parks in the space of about 3 million square feet, equivalent to 50 football fields. Also in retail news, fresh off her big appearance in the Super Bowl halftime show, Jennifer Lopez is starting her own line of footwear with Designer Brands Incorporated, the owner of DSW Shoe Stores. Lopez and Designer Brands are forming a joint venture which represents a step beyond the licensing deals that celebrities are typically involved in. It means if things go well for the shoe line, J.Lo can end up owning a major stake in Designer Brands. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow enjoy each other's company.
Most of us don't speak Mandarin. John, do you speak Mandarin?
I do not speak Mandarin.
I just wanted to check that.
Almost as much as they enjoy grilling economic experts.
When this is over, do you bounce back, or is there a lasting weakness to it?
Which means that you will enjoy listening.
If things get worse, we're ready to do more.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A move higher for the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ Composite Index. We are trading at records. 20-point gain in the S&P at 33.90, up 0.6%. NASDAQ up 93 at 98.26. That is a gain of 1%. Dow Industrials up 163 points, a gain there of 0.6%. As for the market backdrop, Samir Samana is Senior Global Market Strategist at Wells Fargo Investment Institute.
There's quite a bit of complacency. I mean, you have seen, quite a lot of the risk measures roll off, whether it be spreads, whether it be VIX, so it is a little worrisome how complacent markets are. That being said, it's just very difficult to call these short-term inflections. Not to mention the Fed's talked about how they are actually okay with letting inflation run a little bit hot. I think even markets would probably be okay with inflation overshooting just a little bit, given how long we've been in a lower for longer environment for inflation.
And speaking of the Federal Reserve, we get those minutes, 59 minutes from now, complete coverage right here on Bloomberg Radio. Lots of earnings. Groupon plummeting to a record low after delivering worse than expected results and announcing plans to stop selling goods. It's a retreat for a company that once aspired to be a major shopping service. Groupon plunging 40%. Dish Network exceeded analyst estimates for sales and profit, boosting confidence that the company can offset satellite TV subscriber losses as it gears up for entry into the wireless service business. The Dish up by 0.7%. A sales beat from TiVo. Projections for 2020 revenue beat estimates. Shares up the most in 2 years. TiVo rallying now by 20.6%. Ally Financial heading the other direction, falling the most in nearly 6 years after the company, which is the largest American auto lender, pushed into the subprime credit card business with a $2.65 billion acquisition. Ally shares down 11.4%. 10-year yield 1.56%. Gold up 0.4%, $16.07 the ounce, and crude oil rallying 2.7%, $53.48 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. Again, the S&P up 20. That's a gain of 0.6%. The Dow up 165, up 0.6. NASDAQ up by 1%. It is 1:02 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are higher, though not as much as U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is up 0.4%, and the S&P 500 is up 0.6%. Deutsche Telekom has risen 4.6% in U.S. trading. The German phone company's fourth quarter revenue beat analysts' average estimate in a Bloomberg survey, though earnings came up short. And the company's T-Mobile U.S. unit moved closer to buying Sprint as New York State ended a court challenge to the deal. China's Wanda Sports Group has risen 6.5%. The sports marketer is rallying for a second day after people familiar with the matter said it's considering a sale of the Ironman triathlon business. Wanda Sports climbed yesterday by 45%. ADRs of Walmart's Mexican unit have fallen 3.2%. The company known as Walmex said it's been ordered to pay about $575 million in federal taxes on the 2014 sale of a restaurant business. Walmex has appealed the ruling. And Spain's ACS has lost 4%. Last year's net income at the engineering and construction company was lower than analysts' average estimate. Charlie?
And we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, following those American depository receipts. After the bell, lots of earnings. including travel companies Avis Budget and Hyatt Hotels. We'll also be hearing from Boston Beer, Jack in the Box, and Zillow. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Attorney General Barr reportedly talks of resignation, and some former Justice Department officials say that he should. The Dean of Nevada Democratic Politics, Harry Reid, says people should be taking on Bernie Sanders. And 800,000 refugees are trapped on the northwest border of Syria between advancing Syrian forces and a Turkey that will not let them in. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, we welcome you now to the second hour of Bloomberg Balance of Power. Syria is making a big push against the last stronghold of opposition in Idlib province in the northwest, trapping 800,000 refugees on the border as Turkey threatens military action and Russia warns against it. Still with us is retired Brigadier General and Senior State Department and Defense Department official Mark Kimmett. So, General, thanks for staying with us here. Give us your sense of what's going on there. It's certainly a humanitarian disaster, I think is not too strong a word. But how are negotiations coming involving Russia and Syria and Turkey?
Well, I agree with you. It is a humanitarian disaster. We haven't seen anything like this for quite a few years. Turkey is in Moscow this week, and we would hope that there is some sort of resolution. But I think at this point, it will only be a figment of an agreement because both sides are pretty implacable in their positions.
It's interesting, I think, that the United States appears to be siding with Turkey in these negotiations. This is what President Trump had to say at Joint Base Andrews just yesterday about his position on the negotiations.
I had a very good conversation with President Erdogan. I respect him. We have a very good relationship. Yes, I agree. He's a tough guy, but we have a very good relationship. I seem to do better with tough people.
Yeah, well, he seems to do better with tough people. But is the United States firmly on the side of Turkey and this issue?
Well, I think they are, particularly President Trump. As you know, President Erdogan and he spoke last January, and based on that conversation, the United States agreed to allow the Turks to come into that part of Syria that the U.S. was occupying, primarily to rid that portion of Syria of their foe, the PKK-YPG terrorist group. As you know, he has no love for Assad and having fired missiles at the regime. So I think at this point, President Trump, and I would suspect much of the national security organization here in Washington, D.C., is on the side of the Turks.
So in the last hour, we talked about Afghanistan, and now we've talked about Syria. Let's turn on to another center of dispute over there, which is Iraq. What is the latest on what's going on in Iraq?
Well, they're struggling to get a government in place. It's a interim government right now, a caretaker government. And while the former prime minister is trying to put that government together, we continue to see rocket attacks against American facilities, American embassy in Baghdad right now. And Secretary Pompeo today said, even though this looks to be the works of the Iraqi militias who are seeking revenge for the killing of Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes last January, he is holding Iran responsible for their activities. As they conducted the training, they provide the equipment, and they provide some of the operational control. So I think we're starting to see that pause that we had since the killing of Soleimani start acting up again, and this could progress even more so than we're seeing today.
Well, let's go to that point exactly, General Kimmett, because if they keep firing rockets, sooner or later they're going to hit more than just a building. We're going to have potentially loss of American lives, and we've seen how President Trump responds to that. Is this basically a crisis waiting to boil over?
Well, I think it is, and I think that's what Secretary Pompeo was clearly communicating to the Iranians, that whether it's you directly or through your proxies, we are going to take action if this, number one, continues, and we're going to take severe action if any Americans or facilities or people inside those facilities are killed.
What's the situation of the Iraqi government? I mean, first of all, is there an Iraqi government?
Well, there really isn't. It's a caretaker government, but it still seems to be able to generally function. The problem right now is between the protesters who want to see a secular government and the parties that want to see a sectarian-based government, and they have not been able to reconcile that. The protesters are fighting against the status quo. As you can imagine, the status quo doesn't want to leave power.
You and I have talked about this more than once before. Has anything changed in that basic tension between, as you say, I think typically younger people who want more of a secular government, who are protesting, who really unseated the last government, and the establishment, which is more sectarian?
Well, I think the sectarian parliament right now is realizing that they don't have either history or the people on their side. So I think they're going to show a little bit of willingness to negotiate with the acting prime minister. The protesters are going nowhere. The sectarian government may believe that they can hold on for a little bit, but they've got the people against them. They've got the government, the leadership against them. So I think they're going to give in the upcoming days as the announced prime minister tries to form a government.
This clearly Iranian influence would rather have the sectarian government in there. How is Iran making its influence felt? Is it through the Sadr group, or who does it go through?
Well, it goes through a number of groups, not only the Sadr group, but the old Butter Corps, a number of the proxy elements. Candidly, they do it through finance, they do it through kidnapping, they do it through intimidation. So Iran is doing everything it can, and the status quo powers inside of Iraq are going to do everything they can to try to stay in power for as long as they can. But I would suspect that the protesters are having far more effect within Iraq than they would like.
Yeah, and finally, General, what is U.S. longer-term policy with respect to Iraq? What would we like to have happen there?
Well, right now I'm afraid that the U.S. policy is conflicted. I think we have one side of the government that wants to see Iraq as a freestanding, strong, sovereign nation at peace with itself and at peace with its neighbors. But I think there's another part of government that would like to see Iraq being used as a battlefield with Iran, and those are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, very troubling. Okay, thank you so much. Always appreciate having you on. That is retired Brigadier General Mark Kemet. And coming up here, we're going to take a look at the United States economy as housing starts surge on numbers out today, but then again, so did inflation. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
If you promise to cover the latest financial and business news from Asia,
we're talking about social enterprises in Asian countries
with expert analysts who really understand Asia.
Aren't you encouraged with respect to U.S.-China trade?
Then you must be us.
Tell us about the trend within this part of the world.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
What sort of fiscal stimulus do you think we'll see?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For centuries, Welsh farmers have been perfecting the balance between maintaining the spectacular landscapes of Wales while producing delicious lamb and beef. Lucky for us, we have everything we need from the elements: grass, rainwater, and a whole lot of pride. Sustainability is key as we continue to work in harmony with our surroundings to bring you a plate that's uniquely Welsh. It's in the taste. Learn more at eatwelshlamandwelshbeef.com.
Hello, it's Jo from Vale News. It's market day outside the shop, and every now and again I join in.
Roll up, get your lotto tickets. Feeling lucky? Take a dip. Get your tickets before 7:30.
Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Discover Ireland's wild Atlantic Way with Aer Lingus. Fly London to the west of Ireland from $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. Enjoy breathtaking scenery, taste fresh seafood, and explore wild coastal walks. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I'd train to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I'd go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website, 18 plus UK residents.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. It is an up day with equities advancing on signs that China may be planning further measures to support its economy as it reels from a virus-induced slowdown. And after American economic data pointed to solid growth, by the way, 43 minutes away from the latest Fed minutes, complete coverage here on Bloomberg. Gains for chip makers and technology hardware companies led the S&P 500 index toward a record after Bloomberg News reported that China's latest moves to a growth include possible bailouts for hard-hit industries. The Dow up 151, that's a gain of 0.5%. S&P up 20, up 0.6%. Nasdaq up 94, that is a gain of 1%. 10-year now down 1/32, the yield of 1.56%. Gold up 0.5%, 16.08 the ounce right now on gold. West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.6%, 53.40 a barrel on WTI. Recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power with David Weston continues.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. From the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. We find out what was on the mind of the Fed last month when we get FOMC minutes at the top of the hour. But in the meantime, we got some important eco numbers this morning, and here to take us through them are Yelena Shelyetova of Bloomberg Economics. So welcome back, Yelena. First of all, let's start with housing. Pretty encouraging numbers on housing.
Actually, yes. So we expected a smaller retracement in the numbers in January than the consensus, as warm weather continued through January. So it was very warm in December, and it boosted housing starts. It was a double-digit increase in December. So, you would think, okay, maybe that will kind of revert in January, but it did not fully reverse in January, and it was still a very strong reading in terms of levels. So absolutely, you can see evidence in the regional data that was a result of warmer than usual weather patterns this season. But, if you think about the numbers more broadly, the dovish Fed, low interest rates, they are all having an impact on housing. So housing is benefiting from all sides.
So one of the things I read, but you're the economist, you should tell me if this is right or not, is weather can affect the housing starts, but the building permits may be a little bit more resistant to weather. And the building permits were up as well.
And they were increasing for 9 straight months.
Yeah.
So since last year, actually. And that's the longest streak of increases in this business cycle. So that is telling us that there's a little bit more than just the weather in this number. So that is indeed going to show in GDP residential investment reading for the first quarter of this year. The big question is whether this will continue further in the year or not. But that will depend on interest rates. Housing is indeed a very interest rate sensitive sector.
So let's talk about inflation for a minute. PPI numbers came out and really surprised. They were significantly higher than what was anticipated. What do we make of that?
So PPI is notoriously known for being very extremely volatile. So month-on-month movements in PPI, this is a normal thing. So this month it was boosted by retail margins, which surged more than 10% in the months. But overall trend, I think, is going to be a little bit milder because of the strong dollar. So think about things like the new coronavirus. That has actually boosted, strengthened the dollar. And the strong dollar is a big headwind for commodity prices. So if you incorporate all of this and then think about, milder, moderating economic growth this year, you will not see much of a boost to prices this year. I don't think so.
So no alarm bells there, but now we're, about 39 minutes away, something like that, from FOMC minutes from last month. What are we going to think the Fed saw in the economy?
So it's going to be probably even more outdated than usual because of, again, because of the coronavirus. So the Fed only had about a week or so since the big news broke on the coronavirus. So how much did they incorporate it into their outlook? I don't think that much. So we heard from Chair Powell since then. He was speaking at the semi-annual monetary policy testimony. He said that they're monitoring the risks, and this is a big risk to the outlook. But at the time of the meeting, they probably did not know that much, and this will be reflected in the minutes as well. So the big question, though, about these minutes and what to look for in the release today is what they are going to do with the standing repo facility. Maybe they'll give us a little bit of a hint of their thinking. What are they thinking about this? Whether they are really considering this option or alternative options. So, Randall Quarles, who is vice chair for supervision at the Fed, he spoke recently in New York, actually, and he was talking about the discount window usage, a broader usage of that in calculations of crisis metrics for the companies. So that might be something they're considering right now.
So this flared up at one point, the overnight lending rates. It really flared up, jumped up, and everybody got really upset about it. The Fed stepped in, added liquidity. Did they basically take care of the problem by essentially sending a message to the markets, we'll be there for you?
That's their job. Exactly. So that's what they do. I'm not saying
it's a criticism. I just wonder if it's sort of gone away.
I think they do have it under control, one way or another. But it just be very important for the markets to see how they, what are the tools, what are the approaches they're going to take. And we might get some hints in the minutes today.
One of the things I might be looking for as well, obviously the coronavirus, they don't know what's going on with they wouldn't know if they were meeting today what's going on, but what they're looking at, what's on their dashboard.
So I think we need to very carefully monitor any anecdotal evidence. Things like Beige Book, things like regional Fed surveys, Philly Fed, Empire State surveys. They're very important at this point. So most up-to-date releases, this is what we need to focus on, because we will not get an official data for quite some time. Yeah. But monitor anecdotal evidence.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you so much. Always great to have you with us. That's Yelena Sherdecheva from Bloomberg Economics. Coming up here, a distinguished Justice Department veteran says that Attorney General Barr is wrong on both the law and the history in his quest to enhance the power of the president. We're back with Donald Ayer. He's former Deputy Attorney General under George Herbert Walker Bush. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are posting gains on signs that China is planning measures to support its economy as it reels from the impact of the coronavirus. The Dow is up 165 points, S&P up 20, the Nasdaq climbing 93 points. The International Monetary Fund forecasts a rebound in global growth this year, despite risks associated with the further spread of the coronavirus. And you could put a fork in Blue Apron. The meal kit delivery service is looking at what it calls a broad range of strategic options, and that means the company is looking at selling itself for a merger. Last quarter, sales dropped by about a third, and profits also came up short. And Bed Bath & Beyond is selling its personalization mall.com business. The company agreed to sell the online personalized gift company for $252 million to 1-800-Flowers. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you could keep the top?
Discover Ireland's Wild Atlantic Way with Aer Lingus. Fly London to the west of Ireland from $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. Enjoy breathtaking scenery, taste fresh seafood, and explore wild coastal walks. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
For gentlemen who value the quality of an exquisitely made shoe, Jones Bootmaker Master Shoemakers introduce the world-exclusive collection by Loke. Experience the comfort of the cushioned leather footbed and the sustainable, repairable Goodyear welted sole. The world-exclusive comfort collection by Jones Bootmaker and Loke, handmade in Britain. Available at Bow Lane, Broad Street, Fenchurch Street, German Street, Canary Wharf and stores nationwide. Or order online at jonesbootmaker.com.
Build the trolley with your favourite brands for less at Asda. Mix and match across beauty products like Tresemme, Sure and Simple and get any two for only £3. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices range from £1.50 to £2.45.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing, gotta check me your vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back. While Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, President Trump asserts virtually unfettered power to control his Justice Department. We're joined by my colleague June Grasso to talk about the law, the history surrounding law enforcement in the executive branch. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
And I thank you very much. And we have got 29 minutes to go until we get the latest Fed minutes, complete coverage as they break right here on Bloomberg Radio. Equities are pushing higher on signs that China may be planning further measures to support its economy as it reels from a virus-induced slowdown. Also, after American economic data pointed to solid growth, gains for chip makers and technology hardware companies led the S&P 500 index toward a new record after Bloomberg News reported that China's latest moves to a growth include possible bailouts for hard-hit industries. Here's where we stand. S&P 500 index up 20 now, a gain of 0.6%. NASDAQ looking at a record up 93 at 98.26 right now. That's a gain of 1%. In the year-to-date column on the NASDAQ Composite Index surging 9.5%. Only the middle of February. We've got the S&P up 20, again up 0.6. The Dow, as I mentioned, up by 0.5. 10-year down 132nd. The yield right now 1.56%. Gold up 0.4%, pushing higher at $16.08 the ounce. 2.5% jump today for West Texas Intermediate crude, up $1.30 a barrel now at $53.35. Brent 59.24, barrel of Brent up by 2.6%. The outlook for home building is bright, and with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinidel Giudice.
Building permits, a proxy for future home construction, rose in January to the highest since 2007, more than a decade ago. It's the latest sign low mortgage rates and a robust labor market are bolstering the property market. Starts of new construction are also elevated, hovering close to December's 13-year high, thanks also to mild weather. Vinidel Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
And again, we do have those Fed minutes for you coming up in just about 27 minutes right here on Bloomberg Radio. Well, some of the other stories that we're following for you today in terms of the economic data, wholesale prices are up. The government's producer price index rose 0.5% in January, largest gain since 2018. Service costs accounted for 90% of the gain, a sign that inflation could be accelerating. Data issued last week suggested consumer prices are tame. China plans to take over troubled conglomerate HNA Group and sell off its airline assets, the most dramatic step to date by the state to contain the deepening economic damage from the deadly coronavirus epidemic. Some of the individual story stocks we're following today, Groupon plummeting to an all-time low after delivering worse than expected results and announcing plans to stop selling goods, a retreat for a company that once aspired to be a major shopping service. Groupon plunging 41%. Dish Network came in better than analyst expectations today after earnings, shares up by 0.5%. A sales beat also from TiVo, shares rallying now by 21%. Projections for 2020 revenue beat estimates. Ally Financial down the most in nearly 6 years after the company, which is the largest American auto lender, pushed into the subprime credit card business with a $2.65 billion acquisition. And after the bell, lots of earnings, including travel stocks Avis Budget and Hyatt Hotels. We'll also be hearing from Boston Beer, Jack in the Box, and Zillow. Again, recapping the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all advancing today. S&P 500 index up 20, a gain of 0.6%. NASDAQ up 94, higher by 1%. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 147, higher by 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. A balance of power continues. Once again, here he is, David Weston.
Thanks so much to Charlie Pellet. Attorney General Barr may be taking issue with the wisdom of presidential tweets concerning law enforcement. And talking with ABC's Pierre Thomas last week, he claimed that none of his decisions has been influenced by anyone, not even the president.
And I will make those decisions based on what I think is the right thing to do, and I'm not going to be bullied or influenced by anybody. And I said at the time, whether it's Congress, newspaper, editorial boards, or the president.
But then again, Mr. Barr has made it clear over the years that he regards the president's power to be almost entirely beyond the reach of the Justice Department to review. To take us through the complex relationship between the executive and law enforcement, we welcome now my colleague, June Grassa. So, June, this is a really complicated area because the Attorney General does report to the President of the United States, but historically, at least, there's been a perception he has a higher calling to really enforce the law.
And historically, and even currently, it's the Attorney General is referred to as the nation's top law enforcement officer. Now, yesterday, President Trump said after granting these pardons that he is, in fact, the top executive officer, the top law enforcement officer. So I think that the problem here is there's multiple problems here. One, you have Bill Barr, who believes in a very strong executive branch, and not only a strong executive branch, which a lot of people believe in, but in his latest term as Attorney General, he has gone far beyond that. He has, for example, let me think of some of the many examples. He has set up a private sort of conduit for Rudy Giuliani to bring in information.
Directly to him about Ukraine.
And he has not allowed. He has been behind the response of the Trump administration to congressional subpoenas saying that, no, the president doesn't have to respond to Congress. So the question is, if the president doesn't have to respond to Congress, then what is the check on the president? And according to Bill Barr's writings and the way he's been acting, there is no check on the president.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not just a disagreement over the facts or a particular application of the law to particular facts. There's a philosophical issue here. As you point out, there's a piece in Atlantic actually written by Don Ayer, who is the former Deputy Attorney General under President George Herbert Walker Bush, really recounting a Federalist Society speech that Mr. Barr gave before he was Attorney General, where he basically said the president and the executive can do whatever they want. And in fact, he even takes issue with the interpretation of history, saying that actually the framers were not concerned about an overpowering president. Exactly. They were much more concerned about Congress.
Which is, I read that, I was stunned by that because it sort of turns our interpretations of what the founders wanted. And if you read books about the founders, they were concerned about a president becoming a king. And that was one of the reasons they put impeachment in. And there was discussion back and forth about whether or not there should be impeachment. So in reading that, I realized that this goes to his fundamental beliefs in the executive branch and a different interpretation of history, and also an interpretation that ignores the fact that the Supreme Court told President Harry Truman, no, you can't do that with the steel mills. So, I mean, it ignores a lot of what has been done.
Well, exactly right. I mean, we've been talking about the Justice Department, and Attorney General Barr has said he has an issue with his people if they don't believe that he's doing the thing because he thinks it's right. He also said he's got an issue with the courts because these people have to appear before court and they have to believe that what they're saying is not just political, but is actually what they believe the law provides. And in that same Federalist Society speech, reportedly, Mr. Barr went so far as to say he didn't think the Supreme Court had a role in refereeing between two branches of the government. I mean, really overturning, you remember Marbury versus Madison and Chief Justice Marshall.
I wonder what the Supreme Court justices, and particularly Chief Justice, feel about this, but because when now all these cases are coming before the justices, obviously it seems that his fundamental beliefs go against many of the core beliefs of the legal system. Certainly that courts can intervene between two branches if they feel that they can.
And June, you know this so well, having covered the federal judiciary for so many years. Judges, whether they are Republicans or Democrats, appointed by Republicans, they do not like anybody interfering with they will rally together on that issue.
Well, look at what's happening with Judge Amy Berman Jackson in the Roger Stone case. Not only did the Chief Judge, Beryl Howell, come out and try to explain what judges do, but there's an emergency meeting of National Association of Judges to talk about this crisis. And what's going to happen tomorrow in the Roger Stone sentencing, I predict, is that it's not even going to be mentioned. I don't think Judge Jackson is going to do what some people have suggested, call the prosecutors on the carpet and say, why did you change your recommendation? I think she's just going to flat out give her sentencing.
Yeah, it does raise questions about whether what the Attorney General was really complaining about was not that President Trump told him what to do, but they did it by tweet publicly, right?
Exactly, because he hasn't changed what he's doing. He's still having investigations in the Justice Department. So,
okay, thank you so much to my colleague June Grasso. Coming up as we head to the Nevada caucuses, we get some thoughts from former Majority Leader Harry Reid, the Dean of Democratic Politics in that state. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear, and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
News. This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing, gotta check me a vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back. While Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing. Right now, we have got the NASDAQ Composite Index trading at a record. Also, the S&P 500 Index at a record, up 20 now, 33.90. That's a gain of 0.6%. NASDAQ up 95, a gain of 1%. The Dow pushing higher by 145 points, up 0.5%. And again, worth pointing out that in the year-to-date column on the Bloomberg, NASDAQ is up 9.5%. The 10-year, 1.56% on the yield. Gold up 0.4%, 16.08. West Texas Intermediate up 2.5%, 53.35 a barrel. Equities higher on signs that China may be planning further measures to support its economy as it reels from that virus-induced slowdown. Recapping equities higher, S&P, NASDAQ at records, S&P up 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. Once again, here he is, your host on the Wednesday edition, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. Live from the Interactive Brokers Studio, this is Balance of Power. I am David Weston. When it comes to Democratic politics in Nevada, there's everybody else, and then there's Harry Reid, the former Senate Majority Leader. Bloomberg Businessweek national correspondent Josh Green sat down with Senator Reid out in Las Vegas for his thoughts on the race. And we welcome Josh now to take us through what he learned. So, Josh, first of all, congratulations. A great interview that you did. It's up on the Bloomberg in your piece. Give us a sense of what Harry Reid told you, at least about the Nevada caucuses coming up on Saturday.
Well, what Reid told me was that it's a wide-open race. The Democratic primary is generally very positive about all the candidates, but it was clear in the course of our discussion that there was a lot of concern about Bernie Sanders emerging as the Democratic frontrunner. Now, Reid himself didn't say he was worried. He was very positive about Sanders, but one thing he told me was that he has received a lot of incoming phone calls from the other Democratic candidates, and he said they're all worried about the fact that Sanders seems to be pulling away in the race. I think the broad expectation is that he's set to win the Nevada caucuses on Saturday, which would further increase his lead. And Reid told me that his advice to the candidates was stop sitting by, doing nothing about it. If you want to stop Bernie, you're going to have to speak up and confront him directly, and that's something that Democrats so far have been loath to do.
And why is that? It does strike me as fairly extraordinary. I think the one and only Democratic candidate for president who's a self-described Democratic socialist, you'd think he might be most vulnerable, and yet I'm not sure anybody has really taken him on, certainly on a debate stage.
You know, it's a great question. I put that question to Reid, and he sort of shrugged his shoulders and said basically that he thought that the other candidates were afraid, that they were afraid that there would be a backlash if they were to confront Sanders directly. And if you look back at some prior examples in this Democratic race, Kamala Harris confronting Joe Biden over his busing record, well, she's out of the race. You know, Julian Castro going over other candidates, he's out of the race. There is a fear among Democrats that if you seem uncharitable or overly aggressive, that it's going to hurt you more than it helps your case by taking down the front runner in Sanders. I mean, Reid's message was, you've got to do something to change his momentum, or he is going to emerge as a Democratic nominee.
Yeah, interestingly, though, when people took on Elizabeth Warren about how she's going to pay for Medicare for all, I don't think that the people who took her on really got hurt. And I wonder if there's also a difference in the quality of the Bernie Sanders following. I mean, we had last time with Hillary Clinton a perception that he did not necessarily give up the nomination gracefully. Can I put it that way to Hillary Clinton?
You know, I think that's right. I mean, the tricky thing in talking to strategists for other campaigns is that, you know, Warren, when she was attacked, was doing her best to avoid answering the question of how she'd pay for a Medicare for all plan. She didn't want to say that she would raise taxes on the middle class. Well, Bernie Sanders had no problem saying that he's going to raise taxes on the middle class.